Howdy, and welcome to No Shave Mondays. Thank you, Gordon Moat, for our wonderful introduction. Happy Monday to you. Happy Monday to you. I hope you've had a good Monday. I've had a great day. Hey, let me tell you what happened the other day to me. I went to eat breakfast with somebody at the Tapatio down the street, a Mexican restaurant, and once again, I lost my wallet. And I got home and was so upset and remembered that where I was when I last saw it, ran back down there, and that sweet Mexican waitress had taken my wallet and hidden it, and it had a bunch of cash in it too from the record table. And she gave it back to me, all my credit cards, and I slipped out a large bill, and she said, "Oh, I can't take that." I said, "Oh, darling, you have to take it. You do not understand how much struggle you have saved me from." Because, I just replaced that stinking wallet. I've got to figure out what to do when I go out where I don't take the whole wallet. I need my license. I need my insurance card because, I am 60. And I guess a credit card. But then tip money, I guess a little of that. Anyway, that just popped in my head. So how was your Monday? I hope it was good. And I hope you have your water. Jonathan A. Martin, for those of you who might think I'm talking about the Jonathan Martin of the Martins, the singers. No, this is Jonathan Martin, the preacher. He has become a very good friend. And let me see if he else coming. He is going to be on tonight. Now, he's in New York City right now, and I'm in Houston, Texas, here in my bedroom / office / studio. And I'll be bringing him in just a minute. He's sitting in the lobby somewhere at some hotel that has good Wi-Fi. And I want to say hello to everybody. Hello, Rena Hutchinson, Janice Williams, Donna McGee, Jonathan Houston, Ronald Milburn, Diana Smith, SJ Productions from Mansfield, Georgia, Cynthia Anderson. You changed microphones. Yes, Ernie, I've got a couple of these USB microphones. Do you like the way this one sounds? I think they both sound pretty good. The other one was I forget what kind it is. Anyway, this is a Shure. But I think you need to have a good microphone if you're going to do this. And all of you should be doing this. This is so much fun. And why not? It's free. Just get on YouTube and do it. Let's see if anybody got anything to say. Joey Wallace. Kate. Ooh, here's a name. Hi from Poland. Just landed. Kate Kruzewski. I bet that's Kruzewski. What do you think? Hi, Kate from Poland. Nice to see you. Let's see. Crystal Strickler. Ellen Peters. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. I'm glad you're here on Mondays with Mark, my favorite day of the week, because I get to be with you, and it's live at 7 p.m. Central every Monday. Hey, listen, make sure you hit the subscribe button and then hit the little bell right next to it, right next to the subscribe button. Hit the little bell so you'll be reminded when we go live, because I also go live sometimes during the week and on my Facebook page. So just make sure you're part of everything. Our foreign correspondent, Miss Tori Taff, is telling us today about a very special movie coming out real soon. Take it away, Tori.
Hey everybody, this is Tori Taff, your foreign correspondent, live on the porch in Bell Buckle, Tennessee. So this week, I have a special clip for you. This is a trailer from the upcoming documentary about Russ and I. Bell Buckle features prominently in it, and I wanted you to see it. Russ Taff, I Still Believe, in theaters one night only, October 30th.
Shame is a prison. I was locked up in shame's prison for over 40 years. Behind its bars, I was safe, isolated, and hiding from pain. Disconnected from my family and everyone I ever loved. Abused as a child. Shame told me that it was my fault. Singing for Jesus and living a secret life as an alcoholic. Shame whispered, there is no hope. But prison doors were made to be opened. Captives can be set free. I learned the gospel was greater than I could have possibly imagined. I am a child of the King. I am broken. I'm an alcoholic. I'm forgiven. I'm Russ Taff, and I still believe. I believe.
How many of you are going to be going to the movies October 30th to see I Still Believe, Russ Taff? Didn't that look good? And we all know them, and you know how lovely they are. You know Russ, he's a saint. Hey, Brandon Andrews was texting, not texting, what do you call this, commenting. And also, I'm going to put up, wait, I created this. Where is it? Here it is, y'all, look. Mondays with Mark. Do you like that little logo I created right there? Mondays with Mark. Brandon, yes, Jonathan has a podcast called Son of a Preacher Man, and we probably will be talking about that too in just a moment. All right, before I get to that, I want you to know next week on Mondays with Mark, Joel Lindsay will be here. Joel Lindsay, the songwriter who's written all those great songs, Christian songs, and he just churns them out. He's one of those. We're going to talk about songwriting, and that's going to be good, and all the songs that he's been a part of. And also, the cruise, you got to go to marklowrycruise.com if you want to go with me on my spring fling cruise with the Martins, Taranda Green Bean, the Ball Brothers, Stan Whitmire. We're going out to the Caribbean March 23rd through the 28th. And we're going to have fun. It's Mark Lowry Spring Fling Cruise. We're going to have concerts, karaoke, games. It's going to be fun. So I hope you'll join us for all those fun things we're doing. And listen, if you haven't got your Mark Lowry bobblehead yet, what are you waiting for? We have anointed every one. So what you do, you put it on your dash, and that way you will not get speeding tickets, because I've anointed them. I've prayed over them and anointed them with the oil from my nose. And I don't think, no, you'll still get a speeding ticket. But I'll sit up there and just judge you while you get your ticket. All right, let's see. Before we bring up my dear buddy, Jonathan. In fact, no, let's go ahead. Let's get Jonathan up here. Hey, Jonathan, how are you doing, my friend? Are you there? Turn off your mute button. Oh, and I just lost him. All right. Well, while I find oh, there you are. You got your mute button off?
How about now?
Yes, I hear you.
Great. It's good to be here.
Oh, Jonathan, have you been having fun up there in New York City?
I've been having a wonderful time in New York. I was preaching here in Long Island yesterday. It's not as good a time as hanging out with you in Houston riding scooters. I wish I was still there doing that.
Well, we did have a good time. And
that was amazing.
Yeah, I was wondering if you might, because you're 6'5", and
right.
The scooters are really for people my size or littler, is what they've said,
Yes.
The people who manufacture them. But you did great.
Thank you. I had such a good time. That was awesome. I'm still ready for like a serious scooter road trip. I'm ready for that.
Hey, listen, some people, we're going to do that too. That's going to be fun. Some people, a lady on the post I did yesterday when I said you were going to be here. She said, "Would y'all please talk about grace?" She said, "I've heard so many different definitions lately that I'm kind of confused." You know, when I was growing up, I heard God's riches at Christ's expense, and that works for me. That might work for people. I liked it then. I want you to define it, and then I will see how I think you did.
You really are. You like the bobblehead, just sitting there
Yeah.
judging. That's great.
That's right.
Well, I mean, I would say like, I feel like the working definition I feel like I've heard the most is God's unmerited favor, which I think is a great phrase. But the thing that's most stuck with me, and this has been years ago, but Philip Yancey, in his wonderful book, What's So Amazing About Grace, which I still think is so resonant, at least in my own soul, simply says that basically that what grace is it just means that there's nothing you could do to make God love you more, and there's nothing you could do to make God love you less. I think that's a fabulous definition of grace that to me really fits what we read about grace in Scripture. You know, this idea that it's entirely about God's love. It's unconditional. God's acceptance is extended unconditionally. I love that, but I love that definition of Yancey's in particular.
I do too. Well, what do you? We're going to get into the thing that we're about to get into.
The heresy.
Yes, when you came over, and I'd been thinking about this because, you know, I've been involved and worked with churches like the Church of God Anderson that never talked about a rapture, never heard of a rapture, I guess. Now, they all believe, all the Protestant churches believe in a second coming. And so I'd been thinking about that. Well, we got into it. And here's what I'm going to do, y'all. I'm just going to play you the video after I play my brother and I. Shouldn't I, Jonathan, play my brother and I?
I think you should.
See, my brother and I
Special anointing on that.
did "Oh Victory in Jesus." Now Mike's watching, and he begged me not to do this. But see, this says Mondays with Mark. It doesn't say Mondays with Mike. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike, for watching, and thank you for playing this. Your playing is so good, but he's such a perfectionist, and y'all can let him know if he did good or not. And also tomorrow night, Tuesday night, 6:30 p.m., don't miss Reba and Donnie when they go live with the River Gathering. You're going to love that too. Tuesday night on Facebook, Reba Rambo McGuire. But before we get into the heresy, I want to play you a little song of me and my brother. I heard an old story, how a Savior came from glory, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me. I heard about his groaning, of his precious blood's atoning. Then I repented of my sin and won the victory. I heard about his healing, of his cleansing power revealing, how he made the lame to walk again and caused the blind to see. And then I cried, "Dear Jesus, come and heal my broken spirit." And somehow Jesus came and brought to me the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior, forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is due him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. And I heard about a mansion He's built for me in glory. And I heard about the streets of gold beyond the crystal sea, about the angels singing and the old redemption story. And some sweet day I'll sing up there the song of victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior, forever. He sought me and bought me with His redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew Him, and all my love is to Him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. That was Mark Lowry and Mike Lowry coming from the bottom of the basement. Mike, I want to ask you a question. Can you quote those lyrics back to me?
No.
Now, what is it about you and lyrics? Why can't you memorize? Like, he can't even remember Amazing Grace. Quote, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that
Saved a wretch like me,
I once was lost,
but now I'm found.
'Twas blind.
But now I see.
All right, let me try the third verse. Through many dangers, toils, and snares,
Something, something, something.
I have already come. But grace has, what has grace done?
Freed my soul.
Brought me safe thus far.
Brought me safe thus far.
And grace will
Lift me more.
grace will lead me home.
Lead me home.
Okay, let's try this one. You got to know this one. Mary, did you know?
Oh my gosh. This baby boy
That your baby boy
they
will.
one day walk on water.
Okay, you pass.
All right.
You get a D in my
All
class.
right. All right.
All right. I'm sitting here in my backyard with Jonathan Martin, and we've been having a good time, haven't we?
We've been having an amazing time.
What'd
I don't
we
know
do
when I've had more
yesterday,
fun.
Jonathan?
We rode scooters all day in Galveston. That was amazing.
It was fun.
I've never done that before. I thought it would be too big for a scooter, but it worked.
Yeah, you're
It worked.
he's 6'5", and I was worried about the scooters, but you did great. Now, I met Jonathan through Reba Rambo McGuire on her Tuesday night the River Gathering. It's wonderful. You ought to tune in if you've never seen it. It's 6:30 Central Time every Tuesday night. And if you're wondering why I'm sweating, we're outdoors. This is Texas, but I thought, isn't this pretty? These weeds,
really is
aren't they pretty? So anyway, Reba had Jonathan on, and I was amazed at his sermons and his messages. And we were talking the other day about Revelation and how I had learned that the rapture was only a 150-year-old doctrine. I thought the church fathers came up with the rapture. And don't let this shake your faith. You can still believe in the rapture when we're done. But I want him to talk a little bit about Revelation and maybe some things I've already said.
Sure, yeah. Well, you jumped right into the deep end.
Yeah, I did, didn't I?
So
Always
I
do.
don't want to be like the
But
guest.
that'll make you sure you stay tuned.
That's true. I don't want to be like the guest, like the Grinch who stole the rapture.
Right.
Unlike that
No.
on Mark's show. Well, see, I think the first clarification I would want to make, because I so agree with that point. I do think the idea of rapture as we know it is a very new idea. That to say that rapture per se isn't in Scripture is not a way of saying that Scripture doesn't talk about the second coming.
Right.
Scripture talks all about the second coming of Jesus. The Apostles' Creed affirms the second coming of Jesus. I'm more excited about the return of Jesus than I've ever been in all of my life. So just to put that out there.
Right.
But I think a lot of what we're talking about, to kind of maybe come in the long way, is more in terms of how we approach Revelation more broadly. I just kind of feel like a lot of people have been taught to read Revelation a certain way, that they were taught by prophecy experts. We had a lot of those coming through when I was a kid, had the big charts up. And it's interesting because it's a pretty sophisticated way of reading that nobody would come up with on their own if they were just reading the text. And so I think what often happens, unfortunately, is that regular folks don't feel like they can understand the book of Revelation. They don't feel like it's accessible to them. Whereas it's become a big passion for me. I feel like Revelation is a book that's written for the whole church, is helpful for the whole church no matter where we are. I feel like it's a timeless message. And I've just become really passionate about getting the book of Revelation back in people's hands in a way that feels much more like it connects with their real lives.
Exactly. Well, you know, my mother, my problem with the rapture doctrine, number one, it's so new, 150 years old, okay? Number two, is that where it leads you. It seems to me those that I have watched really delve into prophecy, then the ultimate payoff is you got to pray for Armageddon.
Yeah.
Because he can't
right.
come back without Armageddon, I believe, if their prophecies. You know, so it leads you. I think understanding Matthew is a full-time job. Now tell me why, because I'm one of those Christians that has avoided Revelation.
Yes.
But you said to me the other day there are only two literal things in Revelation.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are those?
Well, the literal figures in the book of Revelation are John himself, who the writer of the book of Revelation, and there's a little bit of debate about which John that is, if it's John the Beloved, etc. But save that for another time. John himself, and then the seven churches of the book of Revelation. Those are all very real churches that exist in John's time that he's writing to. And so I think what often happens in a dispensational context, or a certain kind of fundamentalist dispensationalism, is that people actually, ironically, take the only literal figures in the book, which are John and the churches, and turn them into metaphors, because the dispensational reading is that, okay, those seven churches actually represent seven church ages. Then at the end of that part of the letter, at the beginning of Revelation 4, when Jesus says to John, come up here, John represents the church being taken up in the rapture. But what becomes really odd about that is that then, Revelation, of course, is written in very symbolic, metaphorical terms, which is not a way of making the text less sacred or more holy. I believe it's inspired by the Holy Spirit, that the words are anointed, all of that. But it's written in an allegorical, metaphorical way. Unfortunately, then what happens is people take the only literal figures in the book, turn them into a metaphor, and then everything that comes in Revelation that clearly are metaphors tend to interpret those in a literal fashion. So it's like kind of interpreting the book of Revelation backwards. And to your point, in terms of the practical implications of this, because the last thing I care about doing at this point in my life is, having a sword fight with anybody on the book of Revelation, or like being smug. It's none of those kind of things. But to me, how we interpret the book does matter in real life. Because to your point, this to me is what it ultimately comes down to. There's a certain way of reading the book of Revelation, in the manner in which we've been describing, that I feel like leads people to just kind of want to escape the world, whereas I feel like a biblical, healthy understanding of the second coming actually leads us to want to remake the world. That's what Christians are supposed to be about, remaking the world, not escaping it. And that's why I care about all this.
If you're huddling in the corner, like I saw my sweet mama do, and she's always, I'm just waiting on the Lord to come back, you can't be salt and light if you're huddling in a corner. You can be a peacemaker, because Jesus said you could. He said, blessed are the peacemakers.
That's right.
When did we want to be warm? Why are we not peacemakers? Why aren't we?
Well, I think especially reading the book of Revelation contributes to that, because Revelation uses a lot of war, militaristic kind of imagery. What I would want to contend is that Revelation uses that kind of imagery of the Roman Empire and the wars and bloodshed of the Roman Empire, but then uses those images in a really subversive way. Because I want to contend that the message of the book of Revelation is actually much more simple than a lot of the prophecy experts told told us that it was. Revelation is ultimately about how God conquers. The Lamb overcomes through his own sacrifice. And we get that message over and over again through a series of images. I don't think they're linear, but we get a series of images. But the point, the through line through Revelation over and over again is that God overcomes the forces of Satan, sin, and death through the sacrifice of the Lamb. The Lamb doesn't win because he's got a bigger sword. I mean, we have that verse in Revelation 19 that says, out of his mouth comes a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations. But of course, that's a way allegorically of saying God will judge the world by his word. But we see consistently, Revelation 19, when Jesus rides out on the white horse, he's wearing a robe that's been dipped in blood. Well, it's clearly not the blood of his enemies. It's his own blood. I mean, that's the beauty of the book of Revelation. John hears a voice that says, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. But he turns and looks, and he sees a lamb standing slain. That's the idea, is that this lion-like strength of God has actually been displayed through the sacrifice of Jesus, and it's the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, not the weapons of the world, that will ultimately overcome the forces of war and death.
Which matches the message of Jesus better than the message of the prophecy people who, first of all, don't know any more than you do.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
And that kind of stuff raises money.
Totally.
So beware, okay? But the rapture thing, when I'd see her huddling like that, I'd think, gosh, that is not the way God intended.
And I love the point you made, Mark, because I feel like it's actually the most profound one, and maybe the reason ultimately I care about this so much is that I feel like we have to have a view of the New Testament that is cohesive on some level. And I want to say that the Gospels and the Epistles and the book of Revelation all want to tell us the same thing and tell the same story. It used to feel like, for me, Revelation felt like this pin the tail on the donkey kind of ending. Like an ending from a whole nother story was imposed in this. What I want to say is that Revelation tells us the same story the Gospels are telling us, the same story Paul and the other writers want to tell us, but it's doing it from an aerial point of view. It's giving us a different perspective on the exact same story, but it doesn't fundamentally change the story. If you didn't have the book of Revelation, and I'm so thankful that we do, you would still be left with the same story, because even John wants to say Jesus is conquering, like Paul wants to say, through his cross. And it's through the cross and resurrection of Jesus that God wins. That's the message of the book of Revelation to me.
Yeah.
And I know something I know that I hadn't said that might be important, because I don't think I connected the dots yet in terms of Revelation and Rapture and where all that comes from. So, I made the passing reference to when Jesus says to John, come up here, and people interpret that to be a rapture. What they do is they put that together with a reference in Thessalonians, very famous reference, and actually a passage, once again, I love now more than I think I ever have, where, we have the image, the trump of God will sound, and the dead are caught up with Christ to meet him in the air, then those that remain, all that. Well, I love that image, and it's a beautiful image. But I think what's happened is we've read 1 Thessalonians out of context. When you study that image, especially in the Greek idiom in which Paul is using, it's a very particular reference. In Paul's time, when a Roman hero would come back from war after they'd conquered some other nation or tribe or whatever, then the people of the town would go and meet that king at the gates of the city when he came back in. And what they would do is they would usher the king or that hero back in a parade for a kind of processional. So then the person who's coming back from war comes in on their horse, the people are with them, it's a great celebration, it's a start of a parade. But we interpreted that image in a really literal way to say, okay, this means that we're being taken up off the earth to go be with Jesus somewhere else. Whereas actually, the prayer that Christians have been praying for 2,000 years, because this is the prayer that Jesus gave us to pray, is thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The biblical story that culminates with the second coming is about how the king and kingdom are coming down. That image that was taken to become this whole thing of rapture was really all about how we go to meet the king to then escort the king back in to rule and reign on the earth. That's what Paul's getting at in Thessalonians. But you can see how putting that reference together with that one verse in Revelation, for a lot of people, has become an entire doctrine. I don't know if this is too controversial to say or not. Feel free to edit later. But to me, it's not unlike, the Jehovah's Witnesses built a whole empire, a whole church, off of this whole question of who are the 144,000 in the book of Revelation. You take like 2 passages and you build it into a whole doctrine that then changes the trajectories of people's lives.
Yeah. And you said also something interesting the other day to me about the kings are cast into hell.
Oh, yeah.
And then they're seen going into the city. What's that? Where's that?
Yeah, so starting around Revelation 12 and 13, you have this kind of ramping up for a war, the climactic battle. And that battle is between the Lamb and the forces that oppose the Lamb. John consistently uses the same language to describe the bad guys in the book of Revelation, especially again from Revelation 12 following. And that language that he uses is the nations and the kings of the earth. And so like a mantra throughout the last half of Revelation, you keep hearing the nations of the kings of the earth, the nations of the kings of the earth. They're all making war against the Lamb, just wreaking all kinds of havoc. Now when we get to Revelation 19, it says that the nations and the kings of the earth are thrown into the lake of fire, which would seem to be the end of the story. But then in Revelation 21, when the New Jerusalem comes down, the city of God, note that again, the New Jerusalem comes down.
Yeah,
because
we don't go up, it comes down.
The movement that will change your whole theology right there, is if it goes from about us going up to Jesus coming down. Yeah. But Revelation 21, when the new city comes down, and the idea is now that there's no separation between the new heavens and the new earth. This is the day Isaiah prophesied that the time will come on the earth that the knowledge of the glory of the Lord will cover the earth the way the waters cover the sea. And when it gives us this beautiful image, it says 2 things that are interesting. One, it says that the gates of that city are never shut, which I find that to be really provocative. Like, why is it that the gates are never shut? But then secondly, it describes the people who are coming in and entering the city. And it specifically says that the nations and the kings of the earth are then coming in to worship the Lamb. Now, when I first saw that, it just blew my mind, because I'm saying, first of all, aren't these the folks that were just thrown into the lake of fire in Revelation 19? So that's provocative enough in and of itself. But I think beyond all that, and then the first place I wanted to go in my mind, but these are the saved nations and kings of the earth. But, keep in mind that thus far in the book of Revelation, nations and kings of the earth have only meant one thing, and that's these are the bad guys who oppose the Lamb. So I just think it's a very provocative image of the mercy of God, that even in Revelation, at what seems like it would be the definitive end of the story, there's no hope, there's no way out, still it seems to at least gesture at this possibility that somehow there still might be some way of saying yes to Jesus. The gates are still open. How are these people entering in? And again, I'm not trying to hang the whole doctrine on that. I just think, because this is the broader point.
No, we got to make sure somebody goes to hell.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And it's clearly not us. It's the other guy. Right. The other guy goes to hell.
What if Jesus, I know this is heresy and I don't believe this, but what if Jesus ends up saving the world like he said he said, I'll make all things new.
Yes.
Y'all, it's just us talking here. I don't believe this. I'm just talking out loud and you're hearing me. Yeah. But what if God did that? Would you be opposed?
I certainly wouldn't be opposed. And while I do not think that Scripture in any way clearly teaches that all will be saved in the end, so I don't say that because I don't feel authorized to say that, I also think Scripture gives us real reason to hope for that and to pray for that. If every knee is going to bow and every tongue confess that Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father, do we really think that the way that God would do that would be through the way of Caesar? Like he's going to be putting a sword to everybody's throat to get them to bow? Like what I've always thought about that image is that, is that the beauty of God would be so compelling that when people really see Christ in all his glory, that he's irresistible in that way. So I do hope for the salvation of all. I do pray for the salvation of all.
But don't count on it. Make sure you know Jesus before you leave here.
Well, because
I've always thought if that does play out that way, and that's up to God. I'm not God. The good thing about being a recovering fundamentalist is you don't have to be God anymore.
That's right.
You don't have to know it all anymore. Right. But if God chooses to do that, I would be. Who wouldn't be thrilled?
Who wouldn't be thrilled? And to me, the broader point is that, especially in Revelation, but other places too, there's so much more mercy in these texts than we've acknowledged. There's more hope and more beauty than we've acknowledged. Whereas I feel like that other version of the story, unfortunately, focuses almost exclusively on judgment in kind of a negative way. And judgment, for me, by the way, isn't a negative word. Judgment is about God making things right. In a world where there's so much injustice and oppression, it's going to take the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords himself to make things right. But if you make it all into, we can't wait for God to vindicate us over against our enemies and for us to be proven right and for them to suffer, that's not the message of the book of Revelation. Folks, I mean, just think through this, pray through this intuitively.
Yeah.
The ultimate image of God in the New Testament is Jesus on the cross saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. How is it possible that the main emphasis, that the rest of this story in the end, is that Jesus comes back like Dirty Harry, punishes all the bad guys, and we're proven right?
Why Martin Luther didn't want this in the canon. I heard.
Yeah, that is true. Luther and others felt like Revelation gave too much like stumbling block for people
why
to
didn't
not be
they
able to
see
understand it.
I mean, did they not understand that this is? I mean, when you say, and I'm going to check you out too. Don't believe anything he says. Check him out.
That's right.
You know,
Fair enough.
I've only known him a few weeks. This could all be heresy, y'all. Check it out. When you stand before God, you're not going to say, "Hey, Jonathan, come here and explain why I thought this."
This is true.
Google it, check it out. John Darby, Google the name.
Yeah.
He came up with the Rapture 150 years ago.
That's true.
It blew my mind, and it almost destroyed me when I figured this out, because the Rapture had become a cornerstone in my theology. Let me explain something to you. Have no cornerstone but Jesus.
That's right.
He rose from the dead. Have no other cornerstone, Rapture, anything else.
Yes.
Now, I do believe, like we want to reiterate, we believe in the second coming of Christ, just like all the church fathers have since the beginning of the church.
Absolutely.
But they haven't all believed. There's the word rapture is not even in the Bible. So I'm not saying it isn't going to happen. I'm just saying don't count on it.
That's right.
And be salt and light while you're here in this moment, and pretend he's never coming back in your lifetime. And if he does, won't that be good? He is coming back.
That's right.
After that plane passes.
That's right. He may be on his way right now. Because that's my concern. Is like, look, people can think anything they want about the end of the world, end times. There's a lot of room, and I would want to be clear. I would never de-Christianize somebody for thinking something differently from what I think.
Bill and Gloria go to a church that doesn't believe in the rapture. The Church of God Anderson doesn't believe in the rapture.
I didn't know that.
Look at the lyrics of The King is Coming. It's all about the
right.
second coming. It's not about the rapture.
That's right.
That's why they went through heck with the people who believe in the rapture. But their churches never believed in it. It is not a deal breaker, people. Don't let this shake your faith. Hopefully it won't.
It's going to be sad if some of the folks now are like, oh, well, got to stop listening to Bill and Gloria songs.
Well, I hate that for Bill and Gloria.
No, but you're so right. I just think, like, it's fine to disagree. It's fine to hold different ideas about this. But I think you've said it so beautifully already. The whole emphasis is we want people, it's how we live in the world. And my concern pastorally is that I feel like bad ideas about the book of Revelation end up causing people to live off mission. That's the issue. And we want people to be on mission, which means not only do we care about introducing people to saving faith with Jesus, and we do care about that, but we do care about making peace, and we do care about the world, and we do care about being salt and light, because we believe that God has redemptive purposes for the world. Romans 8, Paul says that the creation itself is groaning and sighing for the manifestation of the sons of God, for the redemption that's yet to come. Why would the earth itself be groaning for the king to come back if that was bad news?
Right.
If it's all about hellfire and brimstone and judgment, then why is creation groaning for this redemption that's coming? I mean, this sounds so simple, but to me this has been a profound shift. At this point in my life now, I really believe that the fact that Jesus is coming is good news.
Yeah.
It's a thing to be looked forward to and anticipated, not a terror. I mean, I spent half my life just cowering in fear, having panic attacks, and even at school and all that, scared to death that Jesus was going to come back.
Well, that's the way it affected you. The way it affected my mom and some I've known is do nothing, stay in the corner,
Right.
think the world's awful, and would Jesus please come back? I got up many times during the night when I was a kid, got on my knees and prayed, Lord, I want to make sure I'm saved before I go to sleep, because I don't want to miss it. Now, do you still believe it? I mean, I do, and I'm sure you do. Now, the bodily resurrection, will that happen when Christ returns?
Yeah, see, this is another one of those funny like tweaks, is that the bodily resurrection, like I believe in that also more strongly than I ever have. It's one of the central controversies of the early church. Is part of why people made such fun of Christians, is that in a world where everybody's mostly into some version of Gnosticism, the body is bad but the soul or spirit is good, Christians insisted on a bodily resurrection. That's why the early Romans, as a way of tormenting Christians, like of making fun of their faith and trying to belittle them, would do terrible things and ultimately burn the bodies of their dead to mock their belief in a bodily resurrection. I do believe in a bodily resurrection, and part of why I think that's so important, once again, continuity, think about the big picture in the story. Man, the very idea that this body and all its weakness and frailty has a part to play in the world to come. Our very bodies are the raw materials, like everything we're looking at around right here, right now, this earth. It's because the idea is not that God kind of like drop kicks creation and starts over. He's going to make it new. In the same way that a person, when they first come to Christ, right, would describe, it's like, I'm me, but I'm a whole different me. I mean, you still got the same body, you may even have the same personality, but it's also like a whole new you. That's what God is going to do to the whole cosmos. He's going to take those same raw materials and transform them so that all are made new. That means nothing's wasted, nothing about our lives. These bodies will be resurrected. What kind of implications does that have to how we care for the real bodies of people around us right here, right now in the world?
Well, I still want a new body because I want my nose to come to a point. I've always wanted a nose that came to a point.
I think the Lord can still grant that.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
We're going to go eat breakfast. And we did, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, we sure did. Jonathan, anything else you want to add to all that?
No, I'm good.
Where are you going to go now? Up there, where are you heading out now? New York, that's a city that never sleeps.
That's true. I don't even know yet. I'll figure that out when I'm done.
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think if anyone had a question. Oh, someone had mentioned, how do they get in touch with you if they had a question about salvation? And so how would they contact you if they wanted to reach out to you?
I'm the most interactive on Twitter.
Twitter.
But I know everybody doesn't have Twitter, but at the boy on the bike on Twitter is a really good way to do that.
At the boy on the bike.
Yeah, but if they click on my website, maybe I should give them my website too, because then, that would link to Facebook as well.
And what is that?
JonathanMartinWords.com.
Jonathan, let me put that in here. Then I got one more question. JonathanMartinWords.com. Okay, that's where you'll find, let me pull this down right under his name. Go there if you need to reach out to him. Also, tell us about your book, The Shipwreck.
Well, my book, How to Survive a Shipwreck, really came out of the darkest season of my life and is just really about encountering God at the bottom. I feel like so much of my life was sort of on this trajectory of kind of, I don't know, just basically upward mobility, and everything was, and I never really knew about how to encounter God from a place of disappointment and failure, and all that has been radically transformative in my life. So that book really is, it's for anybody who's dealing with loss, trauma, failure, like anything in that category. Divorce for sure.
Yeah.
It's really just my own account of just connecting with God and kind of a soul level through that season. And it seems to have been a book that thankfully has been used for a lot of people who have been in really desperate situations to just give a sense of hope.
Yeah. Well, they can go to JonathanMartinWords.com and get your book too. And you've written several, correct?
Yes, just two, Prototype and How to Survive a Shipwreck, and working on the third one right now.
Well, thank you for being my friend and my special guest. And we're not done. We got more things to talk about, more of God to discover. That's what I love about God. Just about the time you think you've got a little bit of him figured out, a whole nother wonderful exploration opens up. Isn't that the truth?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And I was thinking, just re-listening to this conversation tonight, that and I think we tried to cast things in a way that's gentle anyway. But, I never want to obliterate anything about people's faith. But I think even what the role that Scripture often plays is not to make us certain. because I think a lot of times we're certain about the wrong things. I think what Scripture even often does is it actually destabilizes us in a way that makes trust necessary. So the point is not really so much about being certain that we know, but about radical trust in the God of the Bible. That's what we want to push people to.
Yes. How do we do that? If someone's okay, someone is watching, 333 are watching right now. What if someone said, okay, I want to make that initial first step into pushing into Jesus, into leaning in on this journey? And probably what they're going to find out is they've already made that first step many steps ago. But they want to put their stake in the ground, I call it. As for me and my house, from here forward, what would you tell them?
Well, I just think I like to keep that conversation as simple as possible, because I think really all it's about is saying yes to Jesus. That's all. It's about saying yes, and I'm all for, I did the thing when I was 5 years old of repeating a prayer that someone gave me to pray, and I think that's wonderful. I mean, look, I'm not going to criticize anybody's first encounter with Jesus, because any way of meeting Jesus is good by me. But I think the important thing is just a matter of saying yes. I mean, as simple as saying yes, to say yes right out loud. I think the very moment that you just articulate what's in your heart in a way that just welcomes the King, and that even connects with the stuff we were talking about, because in a way, I'm not trying to, I do believe that Jesus really will come again, and I believe in the resurrection of the body like we talked about. But there's also a way in which I kind of think there's a second coming that happens every time a son or daughter welcomes the presence of the King. Whenever we say yes, the King comes down, his kingdom comes down on us, his rule and reign is established in us, his will is done on earth as it is in heaven, whenever we say yes. So, the whole idea, I think, is that in the grand scheme of things, it's like we're setting up these little welcoming committees for Jesus, wherever we are. That's what our churches are. Here are these pockets where people are already living in such a way as if we believe that Jesus is ruling and reigning over the world.
And that can be in your workplace, in your home, around the pool. I mean, when you were here, every time we were together, we were talking about Jesus.
Oh, absolutely. That's right.
Unless there was something more interesting to talk about, but there really wasn't much. I mean, the
No.
scooters. Now, one thing the scooters do, it allows me to get away from anybody and think about what we've been talking about.
Right.
And it kind of, the air, didn't it seem like a little brain cleansing?
Oh, it was so good for me. I still feel like there's things that I saw and experienced like through all that I'm kind of still downloading just from clearing out the clutter. That was amazing in that way.
Sometimes you got to clear out the clutter.
That's right.
That's another thing I'm doing in my year off. I'm throwing stuff away. I'm not going to be a hoarder. I'm going through, and if I haven't worn it in the last week, or and stuff, just clutter. And you got to do that spiritually too sometimes, because a lot of times you accumulate, not necessarily bad doctrine, but just unnecessary.
No, but this is so right. I was trying to watch the comments as best as I could, and somebody said earlier, and I thought this was so true. And simple, but so right. The book of Revelation in of itself is the revelation of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And I think this is the kind of theological decluttering that we're talking about. Like, and it's gentle and all of that. But what I want to say to people is like, look, if it doesn't make you love Jesus more, if it doesn't make you more prayerful, if it doesn't make you more loving, if it's not inclining your heart more towards God and towards your neighbor, maybe, just maybe, it's worth revisiting. Because if it's
a crock. No, seriously. If it doesn't make you bolder too, I'm telling you, falling in love with Jesus. Because I tried to be bold when I was young, and I went to soul winning every Saturday, and I won 11 people to Christ one Saturday before I ever even knew him. Because I knew the plan, and I knew how to get people to say yes. But I hadn't fallen in love with him. Like Vestal said, I just don't want to hurt his feelings. It becomes a different kind of relationship when you go out on Saturday because you've got to do your duty, and then, or you're sitting on a plane and you ask somebody, hey, tell me where you come from. Tell me about your life. And the next thing you know, they say, what do you do? And of course, I get to say I'm a gospel singer. And that opens up a world of, really? What? No, and just, And it leads to me bragging on the most incredible thing I've ever known, and that is God.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Rather
Yes.
than, if I don't tell you right now, if I don't ask you where you're going to spend eternity, then your
Right.
blood's going to be on my hands. Oh,
Right.
that never crosses my mind anymore.
No.
Now it's just, oh gosh, it's just a whole different thing, this journey now.
It is. It is for me too. I mean, it's like it is. It is a whole different journey. And again, I'm never trying to like burn down anything, tear anything down, tear anybody down. But I do believe this has to be true. Surely His grace and love and mercy is better than we've imagined to be. Surely He's above all we could ask or think. Surely the story that God is telling about our lives is a better story than the one that we're inclined to tell. I just think whatever it is we think or believe about God, the reality is always better. Like,
Yes.
how can we possibly conceive of Him as more loving, more generous, more beautiful, more gracious than He actually is? It's just not possible.
And y'all, you just wait till we get home.
Mm-hmm.
And when people do see Him, those people who've denied Him, oh, you know what? They're going to fall on their knees, not because they're made to, but because they're going to see how lovely He is. And they're going to want to worship Him and love Him and wonder, why haven't I done this sooner? Maybe.
He's irresistible. If we see Him as He is,
Yeah.
if we see Him as He is, how could we resist Him?
He is irresistible. Well, thank you, Jonathan. Hey, hang on a minute. I'm going to close the show, but I want to talk to you just a minute more. Hey, everybody, thank you. Let me tell you, I look so forward to this every Monday. Please tell your friends about Mondays, 7 p.m. next week. It's going to be my good buddy Joel Lindsay. We're going to talk about songwriting. Tell all your friends who want to know about songwriting and maybe they wanted to write songs. Join us next Monday, 7 p.m. Central Time, right here on Mondays with Mark. Have a blessed week, everybody. Good night.